Trump paints a false dystopian picture of the United States today, not to inform the voters, but to generate fear and foreboding among them. His statements are invariably demagogic and are in the same vein as other authoritarian demagogues over the past 100 years. The same kind of Trump demagoguery occurred before the 2016 and 2020 elections, and even in his inauguration address in January 2017. But the false statements and dire predictions that he's making now have become more ominous as the 2024 presidential race tightens. Over the past few days, Trump has stated that Harris would turn every town into a, quote, third world hellhole, end quote. In Trump world, the U.S. is already in a third world nation economic status, and only he can return America to its greatness. The fact that the U.S. economy is humming along nicely and is the envy of the world will not stop Trump from making these kind of false claims or his supporters in accepting them, even when they number in the tens of thousands. Trump has predicted that America will be ruined if Harris wins in November. Another prediction that he makes is that Harris will lead the U.S. into World War III, with everyone dying as a result of a nuclear war. Trump claims that a Harris victory will ruin the U.S. and Israel will cease to exist within 2 years. And he states that American Jews would be responsible for the result of Israel failing to exist by failing to vote for him in November. Other demagogic claims routinely made by Trump relate to immigrants. In his prediction about the future, he says that murderous immigrant gangs will overrun cities and towns, and the U.S. will face a bloodbath of unprecedented proportions. Trump stated that immigrants will, quote, walk into your kitchen, they'll cut your throat, end quote, and, quote, your towns, your cities, your country is being destroyed, end quote. He has called undocumented immigrants Hannibal Lecter. A video shown at Trump rallies has a digitally created man chasing a woman in a dark alley with a knife, with the caption, quote, no one is safe with Kamala's open borders, end quote. Trump predicted that the stock market would crash if Biden won, and the market has been hitting new all-time highs. He is doubling down on that same prediction, claiming a crash will occur if Harris is elected and he loses in November. Then there is a false claim made by Trump that Haitian immigrants were stealing people's pets and eating them in Springfield, Ohio. That's just one small part of his onslaught of demagogic representations that are false that he makes to the voters about immigrants. I have discussed in previous videos that I will link in the more section below the claim about the Haitian immigrants. Trump claimed recently, falsely, of course, and with no proof whatsoever, that Biden was delaying hurricane relief efforts in Republican areas. This is part of his standard demagoguery, as well as it's important in another respect, in that there is evidence that Trump officials blocked hurricane aid to Puerto Rico, and that Trump administrations even tried to block an investigation into that effort. There is evidence that Trump also delayed efforts to provide aid to Southern California areas devastated by wildfires. This is just another example of Trump falsely transferring to others what he has actually done, and they have not done. Trump is trying now, as he has done repeatedly in the past, to scare people into voting for him. That's his message: vote for Trump or the world will come to an end. That is what demagogues do: appeal to people's worst instincts by creating a false reality and making frequently ridiculous predictions about the future. The U.S. is unrecognizable as Trump describes our country now. What is Trump's magical cure for the undocumented immigrant problem? And it is a serious problem. Deporting about 13 million people is his solution, and he does not mention, of course, the cost of doing those deportations to the federal government or the U.S. economy. Now just think about it for a second, which is something the Trumpsters will not do. Those 13 million people are U.S. consumers who buy products in the U.S. Now and contribute to U.S. economic growth. They pay sales taxes to state and local governments. They pay Social Security taxes that they may never collect. And higher inflation will result from the disruptions in the supply chain as small businesses and other employers are unable to fill the vacant positions and have to offer much higher wages to attract U.S. citizens to replace the immigrants that are being deported by the Republicans. Then there's the cost to the federal government for arresting, housing, transporting that many people. A number of estimates are available on the internet. One that I read earlier today estimated that the cost over 10 years would be about $1 trillion without taking into account the negative impacts on the U.S. economy, which would occur. Very large number of detention centers would have to be built and then staffed, and the other provisions would have to be made to feed the immigrants while they're in custody and for their medical care as well. Money would have to be spent to actually conduct the arrest and to carry out the legal processing of arrestees, and then to actually remove the immigrants out of the country into their country of origin. ICE would have to hire about 30,000 persons. Then there would really be serious problems in just getting countries to accept their former residents who are being deported, particularly those who have committed crimes in the United States. And then there's the massive cost that would also have to be spent in just stopping the flow of undocumented immigrants into the country, including those who return after being deported. The problem, and this has been the case for 4 decades or more now, is that there is an unwillingness to compromise. If moderates had the power in Washington, the problem would have largely been solved many years ago, at least to a very large extent. But moderates have zero power in Washington. They might as well not even exist in the country as far as the Congress is concerned. One low-cost compromise, just as an example, would be to eliminate the provision in the U.S. law that permits immigrants to apply for asylum at the border or even in the country in exchange for a path to citizenship for the DACA children. That is very low-cost approach to cut down on the people who are trying to enter the country and claiming asylum status. Trump, of course, killed the bipartisan bill that would have helped a lot, but Trump decided that it was in his personal interest to kill it. I'm going to read a summary of that legislation that I'm taking from factcheck.org, and this is how they describe the legislation that Trump killed. There was, quote, money to build more border barriers. to greatly expand detention centers and to hire more immigration and customs enforcement and border patrol agents, asylum officers, and immigration judges. To reduce the year-long backlog in cases to determine asylum eligibility. It sought to expedite the asylum process, essentially ending in most cases the so-called catch and release policy, where migrants are released in the U.S. pending asylum hearings, and it would have increased the standard of evidence needed to win asylum status. Bill also would have supplied more funding to interdict fentanyl and human trafficking. And that would have been a step in the right direction, but in Trump's worldview, it was in his personal political interest to kill it.